The purpose of the presentation is to talk about information security and theory and practice or an application. And my hope is that we will have an interactive session. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to stop me, interrupt me, and let's have a discussion. I prefer it that way. With that, I'll go ahead and begin. First things first, I've put this presentation and this summary together based on the experience that I have, the kind of work that we do here at the university, and also based on publications and books that are available for authors such as Bruce Schneier, Richard Baitlick, the Health and Human Services Department website, and the High Trust website, and the Honeypot project. A little bit about myself. I graduated as an electrical engineer back in 1997, and I've got into information technology immediately after graduation. So I have zero experience in electrical engineering and 16 years experience in information security and in IT. I have a blog, usecurity.com. I like to talk about information security analogies to try to relate complicated technical subjects in a way that non-technical folks could understand. And in reality, a lot of my job here at the university is to do that and to become that liaison between the highly technical folks and the decision makers who don't necessarily fully understand the technical lingo. So we're going to talk about, again, the theory aspect of information security. We're going to try to define information security, and my approach is the easiest thing to define something as complex and as broad as information security is to define what information security is not. So we'll do that, and then we'll reach a definition. We'll talk about how much is enough information security. There is no such thing as a completely secure system. So we'll try to figure out how much is enough security. We're going to talk about the social and ethical responsibility that we have as researchers and future leaders in healthcare with respect to the security and privacy of human subjects' data, patient data, and really the legal responsibility that we have here in the U.S. and Europe with respect to the protection of that data. And also we're going to talk about the effect of privacy on patient care. We'll make it a little bit personal as well. We'll talk about information security on a consumer level if we have time. ATM skimmers, the story of Matt Honan and Barry Ardolph. They were two examples of hacks that affected the personal life of two people. And then we're gonna talk about the practice or the application of information security. How do I stand up an information security program that will deliver adequate protection? We're going to talk about the threats that we deal with, and perhaps, if we have time, the proper controls that we ought to put in place at a high level to mitigate these threats from an enterprise level. But we'll also have some security tips that I'll offer for us to be able to protect our data on a personal level at home as well as a consumer, if you will. And then we'll have a Q&A session, but I ask that you don't limit yourself to the Q&A. If you have questions, you feel free to interrupt me, and we'll do that. So what is information security? If you Google the term information security, you'll have a number of definitions. Really, none of these definitions give information security justice and provide a proper definition, in my opinion. Perhaps the last definition, which is a situation in which information security risks are under control, is close, but still, what does that mean? What does under control really mean? It's really create more questions than it does answers. So what is information security? Again, in my mind, the easiest way to answer a question like that is to try to figure out what information security is not. We know for sure that information security is not a product that can be bought and deployed. Information security is not achieved by simply buying firewalls, for example, antivirus systems, or other technologies. It's not a commodity that you can turn on like electricity or the light bulb. That we know that information security doesn't work that way. Information security does not eliminate risk. It may illuminate risk, so we could deal with it and mitigate it, but it does not eliminate the risk. And in fact, nothing does eliminate the risk except perhaps closing down the process, the clinical research or business process inducing the risk in the first place. Information security is not being in compliance. Really, it's more than being in compliance. Compliance does not equal security. You could be very good at defending your systems and network against network auditors and compliance auditors, but do poorly when defending it against attackers. Of course, I'd rather be good at both, but let's not forget that the spirit in which the regulation with which the comply was created in the first place. And the internet and the news circle is full of stories of corporations and businesses and organizations that were fully in compliance with a certain piece of regulation or law, only for them to be breached and for their data to be compromised. So compliance is a good baseline, but proper information security will seek to go beyond compliance. Information security is not a milestone. What does that mean? I kind of catch a lot of flack on that particular point. Well, what I really mean by this is that information security is not a static milestone to be reached or an objective to be achieved and then forgotten. It's an ongoing process and a task that is never really complete. To use an analogy, it is similar to policing in this sense. You may be secure at one point in time, which is always in the past, but maintaining security at the present time and into the future requires really ongoing effort. Which brings us to what I perceive as the most accurate definition of information security. Richard Baitlick, who's an information security researcher, authored a book in 2004 called Extrusion Detection. It's a very good book. I highly recommend it if you're interested in the subject of network security monitoring. But in that book, he attempted to define information security as the ongoing process with which we maintain an acceptable level of perceived risk. I've added that it's a process that requires technology and people. It doesn't run on its own, of course. And if you notice, this is a very deliberate definition. It's a process. It's ongoing. Acceptable level of risk, because you can't eliminate risk. And really, the word perceived is very important here, because we can only protect against the threats that we can perceive. The threats and the risks that we cannot perceive, we're unable to protect against these threats. I emphasize on this point because it's going to become relevant in the next slide. Again, it's a process that requires technology and people, because people are needed to configure, review, and run the technology, and the process is needed to define how all that will come together. This is really what I use here. I've used it here. I've used it in other in prior lives, if you will. This is the information security cycle. It's not technology focused. You could use, depending on the level of threat and your capabilities, you could use different technology pieces, but it's process oriented. So the cycle starts with identifying the perceived risks in phase one. And again, the word perceived is important and was put here for a reason, because our controls are only put in place to address the perceived risks. The risks that we don't perceive, imagine again, are ignored, accepted by default. This is why it is very important to involve security operations people in the risk identification process. And that's feedback, red arrow that you see. That's really important. We get our operations people who work on phase 3, the monitoring phase, to participate in the risk identification phase. That's really important. So we could focus on so we could perceive the proper risks. Once we perceive the risk in phase 1 and identify it, in phase 2, we address the risk. And you could do that by accepting it, which is the default for the unknown risks, the one that you don't perceive. Mitigate it or transfer it. Information security is involved in the mitigating aspect of it. Transferring, accepting is a business function. Information security is all about instating the controls to mitigate the risk. Again, these controls could fall in one of 3 categories. They could be protection controls, to use an analogy like locking the doors and the windows to make sure no one unauthorized will enter the building without the proper key. Detection controls, that's the second category, and that's the burglar alarm that you have in your building. So if someone will enter a door or through a window, you will you'll be able to quickly detect that intrusion. And the third category is the response category, and that's the police arriving at the scene because they received the alarm, how quickly they're going to arrive, what kind of force with which they're going to show, and how will they deal with the threat to neutralize it. These are physical security analogies, but all are very applicable to network security and information security. We really deploy technologies to do these things. Protection, detection, and response. And then we have the third phase, which is the monitoring phase. So we identify the risk, we put all kind of controls, spend all kind of money to mitigate these risks. Then we out to monitor on 2 levels. Technical level, we gather logs to look at anomalies, intrusions, to see what had transpired when all these controls that we put into place failed. So we could be better at perceiving relevant risks. So that's at one level, technical level. On the administrative level, we monitor our administrative controls and whether they are easy to comply with, folks that are still relevant or not. We don't want to end up with a control dealing with a threat, be it technical or administrative, that's no longer relevant. And we're wasting resources, valuable resources, if we're doing that. So we're in a constant state of change and realignment. So I just want to stop for a second and do a check. This is my first time doing an AvayaLive presentation, and I want to make sure that everything is working fine because all I see is the presentation in front of me. Are we okay? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you. Mm-hmm.
Super, very good. Just making sure. I want to make sure that this thing works. So it's really interesting. I'm enjoying it. So thanks. Okay. So as the Chief Information Security Officer of really a major academic medical center like ours, I get asked all the time by people that I run into at the elevator lobby, for example. And they ask me casually, are we secure yet? Are you keeping us secure? And have we secured our network yet? Which is a very difficult question to answer. It's kind of similar to asking your primary care physician if you are healthy today. If I were to run into my primary care physician and ask him if I'm healthy, and his answer would be yes, you are healthy, I would start looking for another primary care physician the next day because he provided a quick answer without running the proper tests and checks on my vital statistics to tell me if I'm healthy or not. And we do the same thing as security professionals. A better answer to one of these three questions that I get asked would be based on the last time I checked our sensors and network mitigation controls, I see no indication of a problem. And therefore, I assume that we are managing risk. So one thing that we established earlier in the presentation, and I'll repeat that, there is no such thing as a secure system or a secure network. An always secure network is a myth. Now, a defensible network can be a reality. And Richard Baitlick continues to explain a model with which you could create a defensible network. The model maps to the Software Engineering Institute Survival Network, which was published in the early 2000s. And the concept behind it is that you need to create a network that will withstand an attack as opposed to a network that is immune to an attack. And I don't want to get into too much technical details, but for those of you who are technical, a defensible network is a network that is monitored, controlled, minimized, and current. Monitored means you have deployed strategic sensors at strategic points on your network to provide for high level of detection and situational awareness. And that's the easiest thing to do, really. And the highest level of difficulty is a network that is controlled. You have different security zones. You have firewalls that will prevent the flow of traffic from high security zones to, from low security zones to high security zones and so on. And that's a little bit more difficult to achieve. And then you have a network that is, or a system that is minimized, so you only run the services that you need on the systems that you need. And when you buy a Windows computer or a Windows server, a Linux server, it comes with really a high number of services that are enabled by default. And so to go through these services one by one and turn them off and use only the ones that you need is a difficult thing to do, but it's the defensible thing to do because you are going to reduce your attack surface. It's difficult to do. Now, the one that is even more difficult than that is a network or a system that is current. So you make sure that all the services that you're running on those systems are updated on a regular basis. And we have operating system updates that are coming out weekly, third-party applications updates or to patch up security vulnerabilities, and that come out weekly as well, depending on how many services you have running on your system. It could be a nightmare. So that's a difficult thing to do. And so if you have if you're in charge of securing a network, you have to understand that you can't make it completely immune to attacks. So your best bet is to make it a defensible network, and you would start with monitored, controlled, minimized. And the whole idea behind it is to have a high level of situational awareness, and know what's going on your network before the bad guys do, basically. And there are, talking about situational awareness, when I mention this, there are multiple levels of situational awareness. The weakest level, for example, is external notification. So someone, the FBI, for example, and that's actually that happened to me at one point in one of the organizations for which I work. The FBI would call and say, your network is breached and the bad guys are in it already. So your situational awareness is zero. The bad guys were in, you didn't know about it, and someone else who's external to your organization notified you. So that's the lowest level of situational awareness. A step higher is monitoring and detection. So you have sensors, you monitor, you may not be able to protect your network, but when someone will break in, you'll know about it. At least you'll be the first to know. You won't get an external notification. A bit higher, you have a vulnerability assessment program. So you are proactively scanning your network from the outside as if you were the bad guy in order to identify vulnerabilities. And as you do that, you prioritize these vulnerabilities and you patch them up. So that's even a higher level of situational awareness. A step further, there's attack simulation. So you actually would hire someone and ask them to break into your network to see if they can do that or not. They call that red teaming. And if they're able to do that, then they're going to explain to you exactly how they were able to do it. And now you can go back and mitigate that problem. So you're doing that so the bad guys won't discover it and take advantage of it. And as a private, as a non-military institution, this is the highest level of situational awareness one can get. Now, if we're talking about three-letter agencies, military institutions, there are higher level of situational awareness. For example, there's counterintelligence, which, again, as a non-military institution, here at UT, we can't legally do that. But counterintelligence is when you would go out there and into the black market, so to speak, and you would put money, you would ask to pay for anyone who's able to break into the UT network, for example. And it's a sting operation, and see who will take the bait. So that's even a higher level of situational awareness. Okay. So, cryptography writer and security researcher Bruce Schneier, and his book called Liars and Outliers, and he linked the Red Queen effect to information security, which I thought was really neat, so I put it on my presentation. And if you're not familiar with the Red Queen effect, which is used in evolutionary biology as well, it came out the Alice in Wonderland through the Looking Glass book. It takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place, said the Red Queen in the book, which is authored, of course, by Lewis Carroll, which is a pseudonym for Charles Dodson, who was a mathematician. So no wonder there's a lot of mathematical innuendo in the book. But the Red Queen effect, in essence, when it comes to evolutionary biology, state that when you look at the relationship between a prey and a predator, the prey would evolve to run faster so it won't be caught by the predator. The predator's response is to evolve to run faster so it will catch the prey. So the prey will again evolve to run faster so it won't be caught by the predator. So the absolute speed of the entire system is always on the rise, but the relative speed between prey and predator is constant. Makes sense? Well, you could apply that to information security in what is called defectors and defenders, which is the terminology to describe, let's say, security professionals and hackers, the folks who are trying to defend the network, protect the data, and the folks who are trying to break into the network and steal the data. Defectors are bad, defenders are good. And there is innovation and there is time, and the longer time goes, the higher is innovation, and there is a security gap between the defectors and defenders. The defectors are the innovators. They always try to come up with new ways to break into the system, and unfortunately, we, the security professionals, we just respond to what they are doing. And if you notice on the second slide, as the complexity of the entire system increases, the gap will actually narrow between the two. So as a defender, you want to be as close as possible to the defectors. I don't think I have a laser pointer here, but if I were to have a laser pointer, I would take the defenders and I will slide them to the left, and I would say you don't want to be to the far left. You don't want to have a vulnerability, for example, that existed since 2003, and there is a patch for it, but you didn't patch because you didn't think it was important. It's a losing battle anyway. They're always going to be ahead of you. Well, no, it's important to patch, even if the defectors are always ahead of you, because you want to keep that gap as narrow as possible. There is also a relationship between the security gain and the security cost. You see it here on this graph. There is the societal expectation, and there is the actual gain that you would get by spending money on security. And you want to spend enough to reach that intersection point, after which you reach the point of diminishing returns. And there is no way you're going to be able to keep up with the societal expectation. And no matter how much money you spend, you could spend so much money, you basically shut down your organization. But again, you want to be at that intersection point. You don't want to be behind, because there is a lot of security gain to be had if you spend money on information security. I just want to check the time here. I may skip a slide or two because I want to get into the practice aspect of it. I think we've talked enough theory. Well, real quick, because that's important. Why should I care? There is an ethical and societal responsibility that we have as health professionals. We ought to protect the privacy of patient data. Actually, some folks in the industry would argue that lack of privacy, breach of privacy, would ultimately affect patient care, because the essence of the relationship between a patient and a doctor is trust. The physician wants the patient to trust him or her to provide them with as much information as possible, especially when you think about mental health, for example. It's really important that the patient will feel comfortable that when they give information to the health provider, that information is protected. And if we're going to continue to have breaches as industry, as a society, eventually that trust is going to erode. And therefore, patients won't be giving that information to their treating physician as freely. They're going to be apprehensive about it, and therefore patient care will suffer. I think it's a valid argument to a certain extent. And there is legal responsibility. There is the HIPAA law, which has two sections: the privacy rule and the security rule. It stipulates that you need to put proper security and privacy controls on. Let's focus on the security controls. There are actually three categories within the security controls: administrative controls, technical controls, and physical controls. They all have to be put in place. There is no lack of guidance when it comes to HIPAA as to how to secure data. So as you graduate and as you go on to become a PI, a researcher who will discover the next big thing in informatics, as you apply for a grant, make sure to account for the controls that you'll have to put in place around that data, that private data, human subjects data that you are going to accumulate, so you can properly protect it. Account for that money in the grant before you submit the grant, because you don't want to end up with your grant being approved, but you came up short on the security aspect of it. You're going to have all kind of data that you need to protect. You're not going to have the money to stand up the controls that you need to properly protect that data. And you can just go to the internet and Google HIPAA breaches. Better yet, human subjects research data breach. The internet will return a number of news articles that will show researchers who failed to protect patient data, and therefore they lost really their job and really their career. It's a big deal. You want to make sure that you're going to protect the privacy and the security of patient data with which you're entrusted. Of course, there's financial laws and intellectual property as well. On a personal level, I often kind of talk to folks and they tell me, well, hackers are not interested in my PC. There is no way. There is nothing in it for them. No, there are, and there are many ways with which a hacker could make use of your PC or your Linux box or the computer or whatever, or your smartphone, if they would hack into it. They don't have to be after your banking information, or you may not have banking information on the computer. It's just an entertainment computer at your house. There is a way for them to make use of it. So there is a security journalist, Brian Krebs. who actually writes for the Washington Post. He published this pictorial that would show all the ways with which a bad guy could make use of your PC. I think it's neat. ATM scammers, if you look at this is a sleeve that they put on top of the ATM reader, so as you put your card in, they can figure it out. There's a modified version of it. They install a camera with it. I don't have time, but perhaps the next time I could show a video where someone recorded the entire thing. So they would grab the number for your card, for your ATM card, and they would record your PIN as you put your PIN in. So, for example, I'm a paranoid kind of person just because of my job. When I pull money out of my ATM, I actually cover my hand. If there's any camera, I cover my hand as I enter my PIN. There's phishing, which is an attempt to trick you into revealing your banking or system credentials. It's a fake email. That's not real, of course. There is Matt Honan, who's a Wired magazine reporter, and his Google account was deleted. They went after him. The hackers went after him just because his Twitter handle was short, only 3 letters. So they wanted to hack into that. When they looked deeper into it, they discovered it was linked with Matt Honan, and he's a journalist with Wired magazine. So that was a bonus. They really went after him. They deleted his Google account. Twitter account was taken over. Apple ID compromised. All of his iDevices, iPad, and his MacBook were erased at the same time, all within 1 hour. There is actually, if you Google his name, he goes through. He made a big story out of it. He goes through the hack as to how they did it, step by step. It was due to a with which Amazon would allow you to reset your password. And I'm going to make it real fast. I usually spend a good 10 minutes talking about this, and I'll make it real fast. Simply put, they called Amazon, the hackers, and they claimed to be Matt Honan. They paid a bill that he owed or something to that effect with a credit card. So they put the new credit card number on his account. Then they called back and they claimed to be him again. They got a different representative, of course, and they said, well, I've forgotten my password and I've forgotten what email I've supplied as an alternative email for my password to be reset. Where do we go from here? Well, Amazon's process was to verify the last 4 digits of the credit card associated with the account before they could do anything. So they asked for the last 4 digits of the credit card, which they just used an hour earlier to pay for something. So they gave them the last 4 digits. As for the Amazon process, they authorized them, so they assumed that they're talking to Honan, and they allowed the hacker to supply a new email address. They sent him a link to the new email address so the hacker could reset the password. They were able to reset the password, get in. Once they got in, they did a whole bunch of other stuff. That was the entry. Once they got in, they did a whole bunch of other stuff that allowed them to take over his Google account. From there, they took his Twitter account, Apple ID, and so on and so forth. In this case, a neighborly dispute turned into really a nightmare for a family. The guy broke into broke into his neighbor's Wi-Fi connection, compromised their computer, started using the husband's email address to send sexual harassment messages to female coworkers at work, and he did all kind of stuff. and that's the case. You could read the entire case online if you just Google the name. But the thing that saved the neighbors is that they were wealthy, and the husband was and the wife, they were both lawyers, but the husband was the target. So when his bosses called him in and they said, well, what's going on? You're sending all these emails. You're sending an email from your firm account to Joe Biden saying that you're going to kill him. And the Secret Service showed up. What's going on? And he told them, I'm not doing it. They believed him. And they actually had to go and hire a technical private investigator to look at the logs and do all kind of stuff technically at his house to prove that the neighbor was doing all that, and then they nabbed the neighbor. Again, they were able to do that because they had the resources to do it. If they didn't, this would be a very difficult case for them to escape. So it's a scary case, really. Mr. Albert Gonzalez hacked TJ Maxx and other realtors. Long story short, and it is a very long story, but the bottom line, when they caught him, I just want to highlight this one. When they caught him, they pressured him as to where the money is. They found $1.2 million buried in his parents' backyard. And I highlight this one because there is a huge incentive for those guys to hack into the system and break into the system. There is really an entire infrastructure and a criminal underground that does the stuff as a full-time job, because there's a lot of incentive in it. How do they do it? Again, there is the phishing, when attackers attempt to trick you into revealing your private information, passwords, credit card number, etc. This is the phishing that we received here at UT, well, one of many. Click on the link and it will ask you to supply your UT username, email, password, and confirm password. Of course, it's a lie. That website is not associated with UT at all. But what happens, they send this fish to all 5,000 employees and perhaps even students. And it's a game of statistics. Someone will fall for it, and then as soon as the bad guys will get the credentials to the account, they would use webmail to log in from overseas, oftentimes Nigeria. In this particular case, it was Nigeria. They would use the compromised account to spam other people and do more phishing, etc., etc. And it happens all within minutes. We see it every day. On a personal level, Facebook, if you notice, this is not really Facebook, just a page that looks like Facebook. That's how they compromise Facebook credentials. SQL injection. SQL injection is a way with which an attacker would pull the back-end server through the web server into spilling its guts, basically. And it's quite technical, but if you read about it online, it's explained. A lot of data breaches are associated with that. And what happened? Again, we go back to the Red Queen effect. So anytime there is a vulnerability that is heavily exploited by the attackers, the information security industry would step up and put proper controls to make it really difficult for the attackers to continue to do it. So what the attackers do, they just move on to the next low-hanging fruit, if you will. So we've done, as an industry, we've done really good work in terms of preventing attackers from breaking into servers. So what the attackers are doing nowadays, they use what they call client-side exploits. So they said, okay, the security guys already secured the servers, and they're doing a good job, so we need to start attacking the client. Well, the client which is the computer, the user computer. The user computer is behind the firewall, we can't get to it, so how do we really do it? So they came up with this idea, client-side attack. Typically, You have, that's the old way of doing things. You have the black hat that denotes a hacker. A hacker breaks into a server. That's the old way of doing it. The new way of doing it, the white hat is a regular server, a benign server. The black hat is a malicious server. And then you have a bunch of computers. These are your computers, my computer, etc. These are regular user computers sitting behind the firewall. So typically, you would send a request to the benign server, and you would receive a response. Well, what the bad guys do, they try to trick you, again, perhaps via phishing. They trick you into clicking on a link, or they do it via phishing or sometimes via banner ads. So when you go to legit websites like CNN.com, for example, some of these banner ads that kind of roll on top of the page, they sell these to other folks, and they happen to sell it to a malicious entity. They would put a link there that will take you to the malicious server as well. But I digress. The way it works, you click on the malicious link, no matter how you've been tricked into clicking on the malicious link, and instead of going to the benign server, you go to the malicious server, and only the response is now the attack, which goes right through the firewall, because this is a response. The firewall will look just at requests, and that's how they've been modifying their ways. Again, the Red Queen effect. Just now, the information security community is catching up with this innovation, if you will. And I'm certain as we become a whole lot better at preventing this kind of attack from happening, the bad guys will do something else. They're probably already working on something else. Again, it's the Red Queen effect. And this is a snippet from a hacker computer. So if you look to the left, these are hacked or hooked browsers. These are client-side attacks. They sent the malicious link to someone. They clicked on the link. Now they own that browser, and they are able to do all kinds of controls. If you look at the right-hand side of the screen, you see a whole bunch of controls that they could, a whole bunch of commands that they could send down to the computer. They basically control that computer now. I'm going to go through these real quick. We have protection controls, firewalls, 17 million unallied connections per day, and IPS system, thousands per day. We have detection controls. We do vulnerability scanning, web application security scanning. We do penetration testing. We do log aggregation and monitoring. We collect all kind of logs, and we sift through these logs to look for anomalies and suspicious behavior. And of course, we have the response controls to include disaster recovery and testing. So if all fails, we'll go to disaster recovery. The way you design your network, again, we go back to the defensible network architecture. So you out to control your network, monitor control. You have the concept. I want to bring home the concept of security zones. Not all devices are created equal. You have backend servers, database servers. You have user computers, laptops, etc. You have web servers, and each group of resources will require certain kind of network security boundary protection. You don't protect a web server in the same manner that you protect a database server, or the same manner that you protect an end-user computer. So it's important when you design a network that you segregate that network, break it down into different security zones, and then put the proper protection technologies in the front of that zone. If you put everything together and you put general purpose technology, protection technology in front of it, then you're not really getting the most bang for your buck. You're not being as particular about your protection as you should be. Security tips. Social networking, be aware of who can view your data, and don't allow indexing. social media profile should not be available on the internet. Good passwords are easy to remember and hard to guess. I'll give an example here. You could say my 8-year-old's name ends with B. So that's an easy to remember phrase. If you want to make a hard to guess password out of it, you take the first letter of each word in that phrase, and now you have an easy to remember password that's hard to guess. Avoid password reuse. What I mean by that is that don't use, for example, your UT password on your Yahoo account or LinkedIn account, because if your LinkedIn account is to get compromised and that password is compromised, then the attacker will, first thing they do, they're going to take that password and try to use it to break into your UT account. Mobile phones use a passcode. Use mobile device management software that's free from Cisco called Meraki. It's really neat. I highly encourage you to try it. Replication does not equal backup. And again, Matt Honan, he had everything replicated. The hackers were able to break into his environments and erase everything. You need off-grid backup, if you really value the data. Because if you replicate everything is replicated to everything. If one data set is corrupted, that corruption will be replicated to all environments as well. Keep your computer updated, antivirus, common sense, think before you click, download, forward, or open. Seek help if you think you have been hacked. I'm sorry I went over time. Any questions?
I have a question about a typical day in your work. Like, what do you do on a typical day? And if you are hiring, what kind of people are you looking for? What kind of educational preparation you need in your department?
A typical day, I try to have enough tactical work and strategic work in my day. It's really easy for someone in my position to become either completely technical and tactical, or completely strategic, which is not good. So you want to maintain that balance, because if you are completely strategic and you're disconnected from the latest technologies and ways with which the bad guys are trying to compromise your environment, then your strategy will not be as good. Vice versa, if you are extremely tactical and you're keeping your nose close to the grindstone, you're not going to be able to step away from it and look at that strategic picture. In fact, when I took this job, my condition or my promise to myself was to at least one day a week, or perhaps I wanted to do it one day a week, but I do it half day a week now. I actually do technical work. I want to keep my brain sharp and my hands dirty work doing technical work, kind of similar to just keeping your muscles exercised. And that's the first question. The second question: what kind of people are we looking for? Well, information security field, we're looking for critical thinking, and we can certainly teach technology. Technology is important, but I think more important than technology is aptitude and critical thinking, being able to logically look at things and question everything and come up with follow this scientific research approach to fixing problems. We do a lot of that in our work. And of course, we're looking for certain personal traits as well. We're looking for tenacious people. patient people, because if you're not tenacious and patient, you don't stand a chance in the information security arena. I saw someone raise their hand a second ago. Someone have a question? I actually have a question for the room, if you don't mind, Dr. Brixey.
Sure.
I'm really interested in knowing the background of the students, healthcare, information technology, basic science,
Our students, multidisciplinary mixed group, so we have physicians, we have nurses, pharmacists, dietitians, med techs, people from IT, from engineering, other domains that's interested in training for an exciting career in health informatics. So we're very much a mixed group.
Super.
The safety and security class that we offer in the applied program is a required class for the master's students. The students doing the certificate, it's optional. It's one of their choices. So other questions for Amar? Oh, we thank you very much. It was an outstanding presentation, and thank you so much for taking time to come. And we welcome you back at any time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.